Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of In the Spotlight. I'm Mike Kenichi, and I'm really excited tonight because this young woman, I followed her career probably since the early 80s. She's done remarkable things. If you're a Knots Landing fan, you remember her as Karen Farigate's oldest daughter, well, oldest child, Diana. But she's done so many things in her career. I mean, she's a director, a writer, a producer, a comedian, you name it, she's done it. It is my privilege to introduce to you Miss Claudia Lonow. And Claudia, thank you for coming on today. It's a real honor for me.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you for asking me.
No problem. So, Claudia, I think the first thing I wanted to ask you was, did a love for like performing, being an actress, did you have that like desire at a young age when you were a little kid?
Yes, I did. Both my mother and my stepfather were actors I grew up in New York City, and that's how they met each other at acting class. And my mom originally left my dad to become an actress. And I was with her, and it just was like our entire life. I grew up in Greenwich Village. My parents were rehearsing their scenes from acting class in our living room. They were in an improv group. I've been calling out suggestions for professions and locations since I was like 5 years old. So yes, I always wanted to be in show business.
It's funny, Claudia. You know, I look at so many people, and I think sometimes fans think it's easy and that it just happens. You're at the right place, right time. But a lot of times, people don't understand how hard it is to get in the business. So, I mean, it wasn't an easy road for you, like some people may think. I mean, you do, everything has to happen at the right moment, but it's definitely not just, you know, you're not born to do Hollywood. You have to kind of, go through a lot of things just to get to it.
That is true. And that is true. Though I will say that getting Knots Landing, oh well, look at that picture, getting that show and even just getting anything was sort of a shock to not just me but my parents. I didn't, when I was a child, I wanted to audition, I mean a real child, and they wouldn't let me, which I think was a good move on their part. But I saw how much of a struggle trying to break in was for them. So, I mean, when we moved to California, we lived in a one-bedroom apartment, and my parents slept on a cot on the living room floor. That's where we were living when I auditioned for Knots Landing. And like getting things was just like, well, I didn't think that was going to happen. I was just doing it for the experience. So it was a combination of, I went to acting camp, I went to acting classes, I was in my high school acting program. I was obsessed with it. I was like the Tracy Flick of the drama department. If you remember the movie Election, that was my
Yeah.
vibe. I was like that person who was obsessed with it. Um, but even so, I was surprised. I mean, I was surprised. I was surprised that I was getting auditions. I got my first job that was, interrupt me if I talk too much, was
Oh,
on
oh,
this Mary Tyler Moore Hour. And the week I was doing that, I got the pilot for Knots Landing. So it was just like, what the hell is happening?
yeah. And
So
interestingly enough, Claudia, you mentioned doing drama in high school and stuff. And a lot of people who make it in the business, they do a lot of theater when they're in high school. Those productions and things like that. And I always say that plays a big role in the development of them as actors because you're doing it in front of a live audience, which is very intimidating. So I mean, if you could do that, you could easily, I don't want to say easily, but you could definitely, you know, get in front of a camera that's recorded when there's no audience there, you know?
I, that's true. I'll tell you a funny story. I mean, it's different I grew up in New York, but when I was a teenager, we moved to California. My parents got this one bedroom apartment across the street from Beverly Hills High. So that's where I went to school. So that's crazy to see myself. Um, and so it's a little bit different if you're great in a high school production at Beverly Hills High at that time. Uh, Somebody might really see you. And I'll tell you, one time I went back to Beverly like the next year for whatever reason, and I happened to be there when they were doing auditions for that year's High School Musical. And it was for Oklahoma. And so I'm just sitting there watching, I'm like, I graduated the year before, and I'm just like, coming to visit. And I'm watching the auditions, and this kid comes on and auditions for Oklahoma for the role of Judd. And he was unbelievable. And I went up to him after his audition. I said, "You're incredible. I mean, you're going to get this part, by the way, but
Yeah.
you're insanely good." And it was Nicolas Cage.
Oh,
So
wow.
I'm just saying, like, it's a different vibe if you're in California. You're the production in your high school thing in Los Angeles. Somebody's parent might be a casting director, somebody's this might be a that. So there's that.
And Claudia, I'm glad I'm glad you brought it up, saying it's different in California, because one of the things that I think has always, kind of been touched upon and, told to audiences over the years. I remember a good episode of Happy Days. It was when Ron Howard's character, Richie, had to move to California because he wanted to be, he wanted to write movies and stuff like that. And that was always what we were led to believe, that you have to go to California to make it in this business. I mean, do you believe that to be true? I mean, is that really what has to happen for people that are aspiring to be actors? They need to go to California?
I don't think that's true anymore, honestly. Sadly, lately there's productions have been moving to other states because there's no tax credit, as there's not a big tax credit to film in Los Angeles, and Los Angeles is expensive. um, and with that, with social media and with everybody having a camera on their phone, I mean, look at you, you're taping this right now. And that didn't exist, when I was in high school. None of that existed. So it really was true. You've got to come to California if you want to be in movies and television. And it's true. There's a lot of things that are still out here. The executives, people are here, but there's a lot of different pathways, I would say, now. If you're into it, if you're motivated, and if you're young.
Yeah, exactly.
If you're young out there, which I am not, there's a lot of things you can do that we couldn't do back in the day. It would be harder. You could have to go to film school. You got to know how to freaking camera works. Everybody can work their iPhone camera.
Right. So, Claudia, let me ask you. One of the things I brought up Happy Days, and I had Don Most on, and he had told me how many commercials he had to do, like before he, got his big break. He did a Burger King commercial, a lemonade commercial. Did you do commercials at all before you got into Knots Landing?
No, I didn't. My mom did when we lived in New York. She played the young mom in like all these commercials when we lived in New York. That took a while for her to do, but I'm telling you, man, this whole thing where I was a regular on a television show was, oh, look at that, was a crazy confluence of events. We had moved out to California the year before, which I was very unhappy about because I loved Greenwich Village, and it's very different in California than it is from New York City. And my stepfather was doing great at that time in his acting career. He had done a movie, he was working on television, and he and my mom invited my stepfather's agent over to our house, our apartment, our 1-bedroom apartment, for dinner. And after dinner, I sang them a song on my guitar that I had written, which has a dirty word in it. And I don't know whether that's okay. Can I say a dirty word?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. The song, I mean, I was 15, the song was
Yeah.
called Fuck the World. The song was called Fuck the World. I mean, I was
Right.
very upset moving to California. And, it's a funny song, as you can hear from the title. And when I was done, my stepfather's agents asked my parents if they could send me out on auditions if I wanted to. And we talked about, I'm like, I totally want to do that. I mean, come on, have you met me? And they agreed, thinking it would be a good experience and that I wouldn't get anything. And for whatever reason, at that time in my life, I really was full of myself, which really helped because I just thought I was fantastic. And I got a guest star on this Mary Tyler Moore thing, and then that's week I got the pilot for Knots Landing. So it like happened within like a 3 or 4 month period, and I was going up for these auditions. I was getting callbacks. I was getting a good response from the casting director and stuff. And also, it was a lot easier to get a job then than it is now because you didn't have to be seen by like network executive. I mean, I never, if you've ever heard about like testing in front of the network, I didn't do any of that. I just I just read with Steve Shaw in the executive producer's office a scene, and I got
Right.
the part. I mean, usually you can't believe how stressful it is. I never could do that crap, It was easy. It was just felt like this easy thing. And I was just like, so like determined. And I guess, what the creator of Not Signing was looking for. He, at the beginning, the show he modeled it on was that show Family.
Yeah.
So with Christy McNichol, and I don't know if you have a picture of me in the first season, but I had dark brown hair, and I was a little older. Yeah, Christy McNichol, and he wanted kids that looked like real kids, and so I didn't look like a teenage Californian actress going up for things. I just was very, I don't know. I
But
just thought, well, they want a teenager. I should look like a teenager. I should look real. I'm from New York. So, I'm like, I'm going to be real. I'm going to be real. I'm going to be real, like that. I was really
yeah.
real, that's why some of the times if you watch the show, you go, Jesus Christ. I mean, somebody should do that girl's hair.
But ironically, Claudia, what I found fascinating is, again, this was like your first big role. You get the, pilot where you're going to play Diana. But this was a show that originally, this is what David Jacobs wanted to do. This is what CBS wanted. But then they somehow had him redo things, and they did Dallas first. Then they went back to Knots Landing as the
Yeah.
spin, which was really what David wanted to do in the beginning. But what I find fascinating is this was like a big project that David always wanted to see succeed. And here he is, putting this show together, and you're getting to play like, you're going to be the most important, Steve and Patrick are going to be the most important kids on this show because you three were pretty much the older group. So, I mean, to play that type of part and it's your first big part, I mean, looking back on it, you got to be proud of that.
Well, that's so sweet of you to say. I am proud of it. It was, I was very fish out of water. Like I said, I didn't grow up out here. I didn't have a history of auditioning. I mean, Steve and Pat had more experience working in a television show or filming something than I did. I'd only done one thing. I did a comedy, like, right before. And but and we were, the first couple of years, really until the third season, the show was always struggling to stay on. We weren't a big hit right away, and when they brought on Donna and made it more soap opera-y, and then we started to take off, and she was a great addition. And but the actors on that show, and I know people look back on things and go, oh, this is like a campy nighttime soap opera. But that's not how people felt when they were making it. They were very dedicated, to making it feel real. That was a big thing, especially with Michelle and Dawn and everybody, making a dinner scene feel real, making something you're doing in the kitchen feel like you're really in a kitchen, and they were very professional. Ted, I mean, everybody was very into making this, making this feel good. And so that was a great experience. Michelle is a wonderful person, and she is a mom. And so I do feel proud of it. And I mean, I stayed on there for 5 years until I got, I guess, old. Old. I was too old to be like the teenage daughter, but um, it it was a great experience. I mean, it was a crazy experience. Honestly, it was like I couldn't believe this was happening. And I guess the good thing was, a really smart decision that me and my parents made was I did not leave high school. I
Right.
continued to go to regular high school and just go to work every once, you know, a couple of days a week and do the work at, I don't know how I managed this. I'll be honest. I saw how did I do that? How did I do that? I have a real job, I'm like, I have a job, like, but not just like a job in a clothing store, you know, um, yeah, it felt really crazy. I mean, it was great though. It becomes like this normal part of your life. When do I have to go to work?
Yeah. And your first episode, which of course was the, first ever episode of the
Yeah.
series, you play like, again, you're in it a lot, and your character gets drunk with Sid's uh, daughter from another marriage, Annie, I think her name was. And it was just a great story. But, what was crazy to me, Claudia, is like, you know, if this were to happen today, I think there'd be controversy. But if you remember, in that first episode, Don Murray's character, Sid Farigate, he hits Diana because she got drunk and stuff. And like, nowadays, like people would probably question, well, why did he hit his daughter like that? But back then, I mean, it was the late 70s. I think the first episode was
Yeah.
December of
79.
79. So like, they tried to make things realistic because families back then, I mean, they made sure they were on their kids to, not get themselves in trouble and, get out of line and stuff. And he didn't do it in a bad way, but, he basically, to me, was like a father who he loved his kids, but if they did something wrong, they were going to be punished.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. I did not remember that. I mean, to me, as I said, it was a little bit of, I mean, listen, I remember, I think the first thing I shot was the scene around the dinner table with Valine and Gary, right?
Yeah.
So with Jonah and Ark and Ted, and I don't think Karen Allen and was there in that scene. And it's all about, Valine and Gary are new to Knots Landing, and Karen and Sid have had them over for dinner, and I'm, you know, being snotty like always. And I noticed that, and we have food in front of us, which gets colder and colder. And, you have to eat it. You're eating the food, you have to match it. If you eat once, then you have to eat at the same time, no matter
Yeah.
how many times. And I saw that in between takes, the professional actors are spitting the food out into a cup, because God forbid you should eat a extra calorie. back in
Right.
79. Um, so it was like that. I'm like, oh, okay, don't really eat the food. Don't really eat the food, Claudia. They're not eating the food. You don't have to eat the food. I mean, that's how. And I'm like going, what's going on? I just have to pretend like I know what I'm doing and just sort of look snotty.
Right. Another episode in that first season, Claudia, it was a
Yeah.
great episode. And I had the actor Les Slannon on, great guy. But the toughest episode for me in that first season was, I think it was episode 7. And it was the bikers who were
Oh
causing
yeah,
trouble on the beach.
yeah.
And Diana's character, I mean, when she gets kidnapped, I'll tell you right now, like, you just wanted Sid, Gary, and them to just take care of those guys, because throughout that episode, and I told Les, me and Les talked, Les played a great part because he tried to come across as being a peacemaker, but he was really an instigator. And that was a tough episode to watch. And that was really like the first episode of the series where, there was uh, where you saw bad guys. And that, you did a great job with that episode, but man, that was a tough one to watch.
Thank you. I'll tell you inside information about that. When we did that episode, David Jacobs was telling us this is not a typical episode of the show. We're doing this to show the families in jeopardy and give the guys the opportunity to do something heroic. Like he wanted to build audience support. I mean, I'm telling you, man, we didn't know whether we were getting picked up every year because
Right.
it was not a hit show. So at that point, it's like David's like and Michael are basically like, well, let's have some bikers come in, and then the guys can run down the hill, and the girls are in jeopardy, and blah blah blah, and everybody will get more into the show. That'll be good for ratings. I mean, so I remember him saying that he was like, we got to get people into this show. We got to make the audience like the characters and care about the characters.
Right. Another episode too, Claudia, uh,
Mm-hmm.
was season 3, right after Don Murray's character, he had left the show and they had to kill Sid's character.
Yeah.
But I really loved the character Diana, how she was to her brothers and to her mother, because she was very honest with her mother, saying, you cannot blame daddy for wanting this surgery. If he had an opportunity to walk again. And even though, like, you know, you could see Karen was upset because she lost her husband, so she was angry at Sid. But Diana loved her father and she was upset that he died, but she wasn't angry because she understood why he went and got the surgery. And really, in a lot of ways, I credit Diana for kind of getting Karen to turn around in that episode. And I thought that was a great episode by you. Great acting.
Thank you. That was like the season when it felt like the show was really coming together. Sadly, even though I mean Don, I think at that time Don lived in Santa Barbara and would drive in to do the show and was
Yeah.
basically like, man, I want to be in Santa Barbara. I don't want to drive
Right.
to work anymore. And oh, there he is. And crazy outfit on me, crazy hair. Not my favorite, Mike. Take it down. Take it down. Not one of my good days. But but his character dying, like, was I think it was the first time a regular character ever died on a nighttime. People were like, shocked. And it gave like that season, this real emotional depth. And, uh, I remember and it played into things that were going on that I won't say in other people's, well, real things that were going on in our lives, at the time that like made it have more depth. I was like, had some conflict with my biological father, and I'm doing all this crap with my father on the show dying. And, it was I mean, I thought it made this, that season that was a great season.
Yeah, it really was. And losing Don, obviously, I mean, that was tough. That's tough for an audience when a main character leaves, because that the Sid Fairgate character was a likable character. He
Oh
really
yeah.
was. He was good to his kids, his wife. A real family man. But um, you could tell in season 3 as well, Claudia, that it was shifting more to soap opera
Yes.
like than it was family. Like I think, and that happens with a lot of shows. They kind of, pivot and, you know, change the dynamics of the show sometimes.
I mean, you have to remember that, like, as you mentioned, I mean, I think Knots was conceived by David. It was in the 70s because I'm a million years old, and it started in the late 70s. And the shift in like society
Yeah.
from one decade to another to the 80s, where those nighttime soap operas became so popular, and like it just mirrored sort of like an American obsession with working and wealth and business, and that movie Wall Street, and I mean, you had Dallas, you had Dynasty, you had
Falcon Crest.
Falcon Crest, and it's like
Yeah.
these fancy families with their whatever. And I mean, so with Abby and bringing on what's his name, William Devane,
Oh yeah, William Devane.
as a sort of Kennedy-esque
Yeah.
character. I mean, it was, and also like the soap and the soap opera aspects of it, in terms of the storytelling, did make it a little bit more exciting to do. I'll tell you.
Right.
I mean, with the whatever, Laura and Richard's
Oh my God.
you know, restaurant,
Oh,
nightclub,
yeah.
like all that stuff was like, it made it more like, wow, what's going on now? Abby's got a ranch. There's horses. We're
Yeah.
driving out to that location. I mean, that crap was fun. I mean, honestly, to do was like, oh, it's a little more exciting than just like, chopping vegetables in the kitchen.
Right. Season 4, Claudia.
Oh yeah.
A big storyline was Diana's kidney
Oh
failure.
yes, yes,
I'll tell
yes.
you what, like I said, it's funny sometimes. I find myself having to fast forward some of those scenes because you watch them a couple times. They're tough because it hits home. It's like real life when you're watching it. But you played it so well, and I mean, like we, I really felt like seasons 4 and 5 they gave your character so many good opportunities and gave you great storylines. But that kidney failure storyline where Diana kind of collapses and she needs Abby's kidney and things like that. I thought you did great acting. Just talk about that episode because I know that was
Okay.
one of your favorites.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, that was a big episode for me. And I mean, like I worked on it with this famous Hollywood acting coach who's dead now, Nina Foch. She was just a fantastic, fabulous character, and we had, on that first episode, we had a great director. This was one of my favorite directors, Larry Ellison, I think his name was. And he was just this old timey Hollywood director with a cigar and these like brown teeth and this long gray hair. And he would come in very, very close with the camera. And he was really intense. And so it was fun to shoot in that sense, because I think like I just got more of a sense that like, oh, this guy's really cool. I mean, like he's doing interesting things in technically with the camera, like even in the scene you're mentioning where I collapse and like the camera zooms in. I mean, you could tell even when you watched it. And he directed a bunch of episodes in season 5 too, especially one of the ones where I'm on the run with Chip.
Right.
He's like it was like a getting this noir close up of your reactions. And I just felt like it was a great opportunity to, you know, make Diana just like, it's like, even on the show, I mean, she's had a hard time,
Yeah.
I mean, and she really was like sort of a, I was awkward and she looks awkward, and now she's in the hospital. She's just, and she's an overly emotional teenager. I mean, she's an overly emotional teenager with a medical problem that's real.
Yeah.
So, it was intense to shoot. I mean, but it was fun in the sense that like you're really getting to do something, not just, be snotty and walk off, which is, Diana did a lot.
Yeah.
Mother, that's like mother.
And the big season for you, Claudia, was your last season.
Yes, yes.
And the the how first off, how was it working with Michael Sabatino? Because he was a great actor. I mean, he really
Oh,
made you like him at times and then hate him, and he
I
did just
mean,
a phenomenal job. But
he was a
that
great guy. I mean, he was a great guy. He was, one of the things that's weird about being like a teenager who's like on this show, like especially for me, was that I really felt like I'm in between, Pat and Steve, who are younger than me, but I'm not quite a grown up with the real grown ups on the show. And
right,
there wasn't anybody else my age in the cast. Kim and Jim Houghton were closer to me in age. So those first, especially season 3 or whatever, maybe whatever, I hung out with Kim. It's like I didn't have friends on the show. And Michael was in his 20s and he was a young actor and he was married to this really nice woman. And, he was just great to work with because I was, I'd never, I mean, besides, by the way, I hadn't really kissed anybody on camera.
yeah,
I was a little uncomfortable, with all of that. I mean, I wasn't, do you know what I mean? I was like
yeah,
kind of a teenager, I mean, I was 20 when we shot that, but even so, it wasn't like Lisa Hartman or whatever, who's like used to doing that kind of stuff. So he was really not, I mean, it was really fun. I mean, that stuff where we're on the run, again, we were working with that director and it was really fun. It was like a Hitchcock movie. And that's how he described it. And, this guy would go, okay, we're going to be really close on you. Lonow, I got to see it on your face. I got to see it. Like, I don't know how much more I can do with my face, man. People are going to think I'm having a panic attack. I can't do too much, but I mean, it was really fun. He was a great guy. He was just like, it was like, it was exciting because I felt like this is sort of like Luke and Laura. That's what
yeah.
I equated it to. This is our own Luke and Laura on the run.
And what was really remarkable to me about how you played it is when Chip admits to Diana that he killed CG, Diana is scared to death of this guy. She is like
Yes.
petrified of him. But then out of nowhere, she starts to like him and love him. And when they capture him, she's very angry at her mother. She blames her mother. And I'll tell you, I got this is a two-part question, but the first question I wanted to ask you was, back then fans gave mail. Did you get hate mail sometimes because Diana was being so mean to Karen?
No,
And
I mean,
no, yeah,
I didn't get fan mail like that. And, but I did, when Michelle and I had lunch after I had left the show, and, she just thought like, they had made the character so mean to her
yeah,
that, it destroyed the character. That was her interpretation. And I think that that is probably the case because there was like 4 episodes where I wasn't in it, and I was like, what the hell is going? That's when I
Yeah,
dyed
they had her go to New York with her Uncle Joe.
yes, I know, dyed my hair, by the way, which was not a good move, but
Right.
I was angry.
And then the second part question about that was what, you know, you just like looking at a character. I felt like Abby was supporting Diana with that whole thing with Chip, but I felt like she was doing it because it would get Karen mad. I mean, what did you think about Abby? Did you think Abby's intentions were good, or do you think it was just to like, get Karen upset? Because she was pretty much like criticizing everything Karen did with Diana and defending Diana when Diana's protecting this murderer.
I think that, one of the reasons why Abby was a good character was that she had both motives.
Yeah.
I do think that she was close to her niece, her brother's dead.
Yeah.
So, this is his
Great.
kids,
Yeah.
right? So I'm futzing with my hair. But she also just really loved to screw with Karen. I mean, I think those were both true. And I think also she loved a little bit in terms of being competitive with Karen, that Karen's daughter wasn't so perfect, because then she didn't, if it's like, when there's two sisters-in-law, she had her own
Yeah.
daughter she had problems with, so she could go, see, your daughter's not so great either.
Right.
If you were such a good mother, why would your daughter be turning to me?
Right. Claudia,
I'm not so bad.
right. Claudia, they've had several Knots Landing pages on Facebook. They're all over the place. And
Okay.
one woman who's done a great job, she's coordinated a lot of them, and I know you know her, is Diane Latuye. And she wanted you to know that her and so many fans, they learned a lot about that storyline you did, and they appreciate what you brought to that character and that storyline, because it made them think about toxic relationships and also having conflict with mothers and daughters. So they credit you a lot with why it helped them make good decisions in their life.
Oh, that's so sweet. Well, that is really nice to hear. There wasn't that much, in the news or stuff like that about that kind of toxic relationship back then.
Right.
And I really do think that, Diana was sheltered, she was awkward, and she was manipulated
Yeah.
by somebody who was very good at being manipulative. And, I think that for her character, she just could not get over that this guy who was just, was a really handsome guy, is paying so much attention to her. And, you didn't really see Diana have like lots of relationships or lots of friendships. You had every once in a while, but it's not like Diana was written as like the most popular girl in high school. I don't think, looking at me playing that, or any of you would ever think that about Diana, that when Diana walks in the school of high school, everybody goes, wow, Diana. I think like Diana's a little awkward. So when this guy comes out of nowhere and is paying her a lot of attention, it's like, the first time she's ever gotten that. And also, I mean, her father's dead. She's got daddy issues.
Right. Claudia, I know on screen you had great chemistry with Michelle, but off screen, you two are very close. I know she was a mentor to you and a
Yeah.
second mother to you. Talk
Yes.
about the bond that you and Michelle have had, which still goes on today. I mean, she
Yeah.
is pretty much like a second mother to you.
She is. What's funny is it's not the same year as my mom, but she has the same birthday as my mom.
Right.
Uh, you know, Michelle, she is just one of the most charismatic, dynamic, energetic people I've ever met. She was always, she looked at me, I think, more as, I had more scenes with her and I did a lot with her on the show. But, and I really looked up to her. So I think, I mean, she was close. I think she was close with Steve and Pat as well. But, I feel like I was closer with her. It's funny. There's, the episode, I think it's in season 2 where Diana almost loses her virginity. That's a big
Yeah,
thing.
and then
And we
and
do
she
the
put on a happy
put
face.
on a
Yeah,
happy
yeah,
face.
yeah.
Well, like the scene as written, Michelle didn't like it. So she asked me over to her house, which was unbelievable because, like I said, I lived in an apartment, and she had this fantastic house because she wanted us to work on the scene and improvise the scene and rewrite the scene, which we did. And she just had so much. I mean, I think it was like from that, she just treated me with respect
Yeah.
as somebody who was also working to make the show good. And there was a time in my life when I had become a writer, and and a single mom, and she and I spoke. Oh, and she was invited. I don't remember why we were speaking at that time. I think I called her on her birthday or something. And I was working on this show full time, and I was also writing a pilot. And I had a daughter, and I was just like, I'm just working so much. And she said, "This is that time in your life. This is the time in your life when you have to do it." She said, "It won't always be like this, but this is that time." And she talked about her own experiences of directing and starring in those Lifetime movies, that she
Right.
did, I think during and after Knots, that were, stressful and a lot of work. But she was always like, she's just great, man. I mean, I went to see her do her cabaret act. It was before the pandemic. And, because there would be some Knots Landing people there. And, Michelle's a Broadway legend, sort of. I mean,
Oh,
she created one of the greatest. I mean, you could see it in the movie. So, I mean, she's great to sing, but, she's older. So you never know. And her voice was just like unbelievable. And I talked to her son, who I also know, David, and was like, does your mom like, getting ready to do this? Does she have to like do vocal exercises, or is that just there for her, like always, like an athlete? And she said, it's just there for her. That's what she's like. I mean, she's got. I mean, I just adore her. I mean, I just adore her. I directed a feature that was, no, not a feature, a short film that was in a festival, and she came to the premiere of it. I mean, she was at my wedding. I
yeah,
love Michelle. I love Michelle. I love my mommy.
yeah. And that's like I said. I mean, when you work with somebody that close for so many years, and you are playing her daughter on TV, it's
Yeah.
just natural that you're going to connect and bond and things like that. But you know, it was. I told you this off air, and it was really hard to see them just kind of. I know stuff happens, and listen, you saw it happen with John Plachette. You saw it happen with Constance McCashin. They wrote,
Yes.
they wrote them out of the series, and those were great characters, great actors, and they. I just felt like your character had built so much momentum in seasons 4 and 5, and to kind of just have her leave after 2 episodes in season 6. I'm going to be honest with you. That's the cruelty of Hollywood, because
Yes.
that just was so upsetting as a fan.
Yeah, well, I mean, listen, now that I'm on the other side, and, I've spoken to David, I mean, before he passed, obviously, I've seen him,
Yeah,
and it was a monetary decision.
yeah,
They, it was just about how much money do you have in the budget for the cast, and what do you want to do with the show moving forward? And for me, I could come for Thanksgiving or something. I mean, it did seem weird that, I'm just like, this girl never visits her. She's like, screw
Yeah,
you,
she
people.
hasn't come back till season 14, the last season.
That
It's
is true. And
yeah,
I'll tell you something interesting about that season 14, which I know I was there to help Karen
make
uh,
up with Mac.
make
Yeah,
up with Mac. And there's a lovely scene between the two of us where I say you should make up with him. And was I was wanted to be a writer, but I wasn't doing anything, professionally. But because I knew Ann Marcus, the head people, I wrote 2 pages of dialogue and said, maybe you could use some of this. It's got some history of our characters. And I think that, people who have been fans of the show since it's the last season, they like that stuff. I do. And they used a bunch of it. So, like the speech that I say, you lost, whatever, I wrote it so I remember it. You lost love once when daddy died. I'd hate to see you lose it again. I wrote that because of the history. One of the things is when you play a character for a long time, 5 years, even though now that seems like nothing, but
over 100 episodes though. So
when you're 20, 5 years is a fifth of your life,
yeah,
it becomes a real person. It has a history. Every week, you've got like this set is like, everything about the set, just like, about your house,
right,
it's familiar. So I just thought, well, that was nice. There was just some, you can't help the part of show business that's a business, but, they were nice to me. They were nice people to me.
right,
That was nice of them to let me include some dialogue. And that was nice of them as executive producers, even when we were doing the show, that we would futz with the dialogue to make it feel more natural. And they would go, yeah, sure, whatever.
right. And what I find really cool about you, Claudia, is people think that after Knots, your career just kept like moving forward, but it took a little bit. You were waitressing, you did stand up, you were working across the country. But I think fans could realize what, I shouldn't say fans necessarily yet, but I think, uh, you know, people that write for shows, for movies and stuff, they realized how talented you were when you gave Sarah Silverman your best joke, and she went with it, and it took off. And then the next thing you know, people said, you know, Claudia is a writer. She could write, because the fact that that joke that you gave her and she went with it and did a phenomenal job with it, I think people could see right there that there was a hidden talent for Claudia Lonow, and it was writing.
Thank you. She was great too, because she, gave me credit in the club and everything, which, my stepfather was one of the owners of the Improv. So, I was doing stand up. It was like, because it's there. But I had tried that joke and I couldn't make it work. And so I gave it to Sarah, and it was like the first writing I ever did for somebody else. And when she would kill with it, I just thought, oh, this is great.
Yeah.
You mean I don't have to worry about whether or not I can deliver this joke, because, it's perfect for her. Um, that after the show, that was a big struggle, and it took like so long. I didn't go to college, and I was on this TV show, and I got sober and all of that. And I had to really struggle to find myself afterwards. But what are you going to do? It took what it took. It took what it took. I found a new career that I think was better suited for me.
Yeah.
Ultimately.
And I think about this,
Certainly a longer lasting career.
right?
Than,
Well,
you
people,
know.
Claudia, I would think this, and I know you enjoy acting, but when you can write something and people act it out and it does great, because I always say this, there's not necessarily bad actors. Sometimes there's bad writing, you get bad material. But if people are performing well and the audience loves it. That's got to make you proud as a writer, because it's your work, it's your pen, it's your paper, it's being put together. And I think about that pilot you wrote about a nighttime soap opera, and it's about an
Yes.
actress who gets sent to rehab. I think it was called Rude Awakening. And
Yeah.
I mean, that really, like, in a lot of ways, I tell you, the Sarah Silverman joke is where your career took off as a writer. But I think this right here too really kind of set, people looked at Claudia and said, she's a player here.
Oh man, let me tell you something. That was my first real writing job was that pilot, that show, which ran for 3 years on Showtime. And once again, I was shocked
Yeah.
because my
And it
daughter
got
and I
about
had
it got about 50 episodes, maybe
50, 50,
53.
55,
Yeah,
55,
55. Yeah, yeah.
55. And I mean, I'm telling you, that was my first writing job.
Yeah.
Was I created a television show, which was unbelievable. My daughter and I had moved in with my parents. I had declared bankruptcy. Okay. I didn't know what the hell I was going to do. I had a 3-year-old, and all the while after Knots Landing, I was writing scripts, but I didn't know what to do with them. And then I helped on it. And then I thought, oh, maybe you should write for television. All these comics and they write for television.
Yeah.
Maybe that's something. No, why write movies? You know anybody in movies. Oh yeah, there we are. He's
Yeah.
a comic. And I wrote the pilot, whatever, and gave it to this non-writing executive. And he's like, and now I have my home number on the script page, I mean, and I've got meetings all over town. I don't have any clothes. I'm wearing my mother's clothes to these meetings because, my daughter and I just like living with her and my stepfather. And then they're like, Joe, the non-writing executive producer says to Showtime, you can't pick this up as a pilot. You have to pick up 13. And they're like, she has to tell us what the 13 are. That was my first meeting, was going to pitch a season of a show. And while we were waiting for that to happen, and I was like, is this going to happen? Is this going to happen? There was a horoscope in the LA Times. And I'll never forget it because it said, people who thought you were down and out are in for a rude awakening. And I thought to myself, this is going to happen. And my life changed. And it was like I was 36 or something. And my joke at the time was, every 14 years, something unbelievable happens to me, because it was like Knots Landing and then Rudo. It was like, that's how long it took. It took 14 years to figure out what I was going to do after Knots Landing.
Right. And, you talked about you and your daughter moving back in with your mother, and you kind of implemented that with your writing. You came up with a great thing for ABC. It was how to live with your parents for the rest of your life. And that's the thing too. You kind of you made real life into like comedy with your writing and stuff like that. And I think that's always cool because you can tell about real life, but you can make it entertaining too.
Yes. Yes. Well, thank you so much. I think my family just has a history of making crazy things in their lives into a funny story you tell around the dinner table. My mom is, the best storyteller in the world, and my stepfather, and so I just grew up, with like some thing that sounds bad, if you just tell it to somebody with a straight face, becomes this hilarious story.
Yeah.
And then also when my stepfather became, the co-owner of the Improv, and I was in there every single night. That's what stand-up comics do. That's what they do. So it was like a weird, like I said, I didn't go to college, but it was an education in that. And then of course I was very much influenced by Carrie Fisher because she was an actress and then she became a writer, and she wrote Postcards from the Edge about her own being an actress and going to rehab. And I thought, well, I was an actress. I, I'm in I'm not,
Yeah.
I did it without going to rehab, but, um, I should try writing about it. I mean, that was really, why don't you write about that? And I just found that the more I told my own story, the more successful it was. That's basically, it wasn't like, oh, I have a desire to
Yeah.
talk about myself for the rest of my life. That just seemed to sell. I don't know
Right.
why.
And then, again, you're working for big networks, ABC, CBS, because I think you wrote for CBS accidentally on purpose, which is
Yes.
another, popular thing. So you've written for a lot of major networks, and even, I know Oxygen isn't as big as the big
Oh,
four,
yeah, but
five,
that show was
but
so much fun.
yeah, but Good Girls Don't For, I mean, that was tremendous. So, I mean, you've put your work on so many networks, and and when these networks are willing to pick it up and take a chance with it, they like what they see. That just has, like I said, again, I sound like a broken record saying you must be proud, but you have to be proud because you have had two careers. You were an actress, then you're a writer, you're a director as well. So many careers, and you have stayed, again, after Knots Landing ended for you. It took a while, but you got
Yeah.
back in the game, and now you're still there in 2024. And not everybody can say that, but you can. So that's got to be something that you take a lot of pride in.
I do. I do. I do. Thank you. I have been blessed, but I've also been persistent. Persistent to
Right.
a fault. And I really do have a great, you know, uh family. My mom and my stepfather and my father and my brothers, half brothers. Do you want to hear something crazy, Mike? This is
Sure.
going to blow your mind when
Yeah.
I tell you this. I have two younger brothers,
Right.
and do you want to know what their names are?
Go ahead. Tell me.
Eric and Michael.
Oh, wow. That's,
Yes.
that is crazy.
And the youngest one is Michael, and the middle one is Eric, and the youngest one is blonde.
Right.
So, but they're both whatever. So that there you go. But I have a great family, and with my mom and stepfather, most importantly, they always wanted a creative life, and it wasn't exactly what they set out to do, but they moved around. They kept trying until they found things where that they could be in it.
Yeah.
You know, and so I think that's always been my inspiration. I really love making things. And if it's something that I really love, I would do it for free. I mean, I have done it for free,
Yeah.
but if it's something that's really gets me, it's like, I just like it. I want to be there. I want to be there seeing people make something, even if it's in any way that I can. And, and they've always sort of like been supportive of that kind of having a creative life. It's definitely hard, and it's not for everybody. But I'm lucky, and I'm really lucky, like, because now I'm getting to do it with my daughter,
Yeah.
who, with this movie that she wrote, she stars in, and I directed, that we just did this Kickstarter for the post production that was very successful. And she's like famous. She's internet famous in a
Yeah.
way that I never was. Let me tell you that, because she's got like hundreds of thousand followers on Instagram, and her husband, they have this channel, the Dropout app channel. If
Yeah.
anybody, if you're a comedy lover, but especially if you're a Dungeons and Dragons person, then my son-in-law Brennan Lee Mulligan and my daughter Isabella Rowland, and my parents are also in the movie. I
Wow.
mean, it was, I can't wait for people to be able to see it. We're in editing, and the fact that I get to do this with the people that I love, that, my parents giving me this love of that, and my daughter, who now I also share. and my boyfriend, Jonathan Schmock, who's an actor, writer, director himself, it's a good thing that I'm not, I'm, I'm not that into money.
Right.
Because I'm not, it's not like, oh, I got to make so much money. I just got to make enough. I don't care. As I said, I'll do it for nothing. But, I'll pay to do it. That's what we put the money in to make this movie.
Right. And, you know, I know like your daughter's bigger when it comes to using the internet than you ever were, but you made this YouTube page, and something that was really popular with so many of us fans was when you and your friend Jonathan watched the supernatural show Dark from Germany, and just watching the two of you watch it and analyze it, stuff like that. I mean, that was so creative and so cool. And I often say this, that like, you can really utilize your comedy being on like something like YouTube
Yeah.
and really bringing in a whole new generation of fans, because that was hysterical.
I've been working on a funny, like a live show idea. I mean, this was all pandemic stuff. Like we watched that show Dark during the pandemic.
Yeah.
And then I thought, hey, you know what? I got this, I'm on Zoom. Like I got critics from people on YouTube. Why are you using Zoom? And I said, because I can make myself look good on Zoom. And like, this needs to be easy, man. There's a pandemic. I'm not going to go buy a camera. But, finding somebody to cut it all together. But I'm working on doing something live in relation to Knots Landing with it, because, in my stand-up, I talk about being on the show, and it's funny. To me, when I'm talking to a younger crowd about having been on this TV show, that isn't really available for anybody to see.
Actually,
now it's going to be on Plex.
It is on Plex, and they just ran through all 14 seasons, and now they put all 14 on demand. So it's finally on.
I know, because I've got the first two seasons DVDs, but I've had people asking me how.
It's crazy. It was 344 episodes, 14 seasons. It was on long. Dallas had more episodes, but it was on longer than Dallas.
It was one of the longest running shows ever.
Yeah, and it's taken forever just to get past 2 seasons. So it's nice that fans could finally get to see that. And let me tell you, I mean, fans everywhere have been talking for the last 3 weeks, ever since it came on Plex. And some of these fans are new. So, I mean, it should have been on DVD, but you are right. You are right that like, that would be something really cool on YouTube, kind of putting that show and implementing something that you make, that you're very creative with. I think a lot of fans would enjoy that.
I know. Well, I've been looking at some of the footage lately because I've been working on this. Sorry, I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
Working on, it's complicated. I got to get whatever. It's a lot of writing to do. But even in that, put on a happy face episode. That whole the clown makeup and all of that.
That was a great episode.
Yeah. Thank you. But the roller skating, I mean, you can tell that I can't roller skate. You got to look at it. But I am hanging on to Helen Hunt for dear life. And in this yellow outfit, it was a nightmare. Anything we ever had to do when we were at the beach in the bathing suit and I'm trying to play volleyball, we did this live show as a fundraiser for the movie. My daughter and son-in-law put it together. That you can still see on Dynasty Typewriter website, I think. And my daughter got a clip from Knots, and the actors improvised it. They put the clip on mute. You can see all this. But the main thing for me, it's like one of my episodes where Chip is hiding out on Abby's farm. And I run down the hill to bring him some food. And one of the things when I watch it is like, I am the worst runner in the world. I look like I am making fun of people who've never run before. I run like Napoleon Dynamite. So, that's the kind of comedy stylings, which I
Yeah.
cannot stand it. There's a bunch of things where Diana runs away. And even when I was watching it when I was a kid, I was like, what's the matter with you? Why do you run? like,
Yeah.
like terrible, terrible.
And one of the, you've touched on it quite a bit. You mentioned both Steve and Patrick.
Yeah,
I wanted to ask you about Steve because
yeah,
unfortunately he died in 1990. But all the things I've read over the years from cast members who've talked about him, from people, that he was the nicest guy you would ever meet in the world. And you got to do a great scene with him that I really enjoyed because his character, Eric, is the one who finally convinced Diana that she had to turn Chip in, that their
yeah.
father died, fighting the bad guys. And I just loved that scene between you two. And I really I felt like the three kids more than anything else. Even when they were fighting with their parents, those three kids, those characters, they never turned on each other. They loved each other. And I thought that was great chemistry with the three of you.
Yeah, I felt that way, and I was sad about Steve. And he was a great guy, and you know, what? On my last day, I had a gift basket, and this is crazy, by the way, because I was not 21. Was I? Maybe I was 21, but they gave me a gift basket that was in my dressing room, and Steve and I drank the bottle of wine. And he was so drunk on one of those days, because it was upsetting. I mean, it was upsetting
Oh
to leave.
yeah.
I'll be honest, it was, you can't, it's hard to separate a job from life even when you're a grown up in show business, it's hard. So it was really hard that, to leave. But, Steve was great. I mean, he was great. We had it was like, it would be like the three of us, like in the living room set,
Yeah.
with the stairway, it doesn't go anywhere. It's on one stage. There's no second floor on a sound stage. So, and we just like sit up on these fake stairs and, hang out in between takes. And, they would, a red light blinks when it's your turn to go
Yeah.
downstairs and do your, Lily May, you've got a harpsichord.
Yeah.
Or mother.
Yeah, you still do it good. I'll tell you, you could still play
Thanks.
that today. But
Sure.
let me ask you, Claudia, what it's hard to pick one thing, but if you had to pick something that in your career where you say, you know what, I'm so proud and privileged that I got to do this. I mean, I would think Knots is up there, but I mean, you are a tremendous writer, and I think your writing is so underrated because you don't have to take a back seat to anybody, because when you put that pen and paper out there, you do it as well as anybody. But what is the one thing that stands out to you where you say, I'm glad I did this?
Okay. Well, my show on ABC, How to Live with Your Parents for the Rest of Your
Yes.
Life,
Yeah.
especially the pilot, the first episode. Um, you know, I worked on that because I lived with them for so long, like for 17 years with my daughter, for a really long time. And shooting that about our experience moving in with them, and having Elizabeth Perkins and Brad Garrett play them, and Sarah Chalk. And when we were shooting the pilot of that, there were moments in it that it was just so amazing because, but I think, I mean, it was truly, I felt like this is incredible because as I said, I worked on it for like 10 years off and on. I kept coming back to it because I lived with them, and
Yeah.
people, oh, that sounds like a TV show. And I go, I know. Do you want to make it? And, So that was really special. And, I felt really, there were certain, there were moments in that I was really proud of. And, um, so that I love that show, and people can watch it. And I'd say like the show that was like the most fun to do, that people, I think you really have to search on YouTube to find it, is Good Girls Don't. We had the greatest time making that, because uh, nobody was really paying attention. We didn't have a lot of notes. I loved working with Carsey Warner, Mandabach. They were like, push it, go farther. And so, we got away. There's an episode of that where the character of Davis steals somebody's shoes.
Yes.
Anyway, that's my favorite episode I think I've ever done of anything. Soulmates. That episode was like, we just like went nuts. I mean, there's a take in there where Nicole Hiltz gets out of the jacuzzi, and for the last take, I said to her, "Really splash Brie, really splash her,"
Right.
because we already had it already, and we used the take where Nicole gets out and water gets all over Brie, and Brie is trying to, she's like really surprised. It was so much fun. We had like this weird Apocalypse Now moment in the credits. I mean, we were like pushing the envelope in terms of what we could shoot, because it was a very low budget, but they had the new HD cameras, the handheld cameras, and we had the lighting guy, the DP from Curb Your Enthusiasm. So we were really like able to do this filmic stuff. So I learned, and my boyfriend Jonathan directed on that show a bunch, and that was great. I learned a lot about directing. I just learned a lot about everything, and it was really important. I also learned like all the things I didn't know from doing Rude Awakening. It was like, I can't believe
Right.
they let me run a show. That's crazy. But this time it was like, I really know what we're doing, and we're really going to try this. We're going to try that. We're going to get this. We're going to get that. So I think like that was a great experience too. Boy, I
Right.
love that. You guys should watch it. It's dirty.
It's good. Claudia, I think one thing that I hope you'll consider doing someday, because I think it'd be really cool, because
Sure.
you're a talented writer and you're very funny and you would do a great job, is doing a show about yourself, but in an exaggeration, like
Oh yeah.
playing yourself in an exaggeration way would be awesome.
Well, I do play a version of myself in that movie.
Yeah.
And for fans of Knots Landing, you're going to see something that it'll make you cry, but it'll make you cry.
Yeah, definitely.
If
Well,
you like
Claudia, yeah,
some good old Claudia Lonow crying, then you're going to see it in our movie. And so follow me on Instagram, because I'll be updating everything.
well, Claudia, I want to say that thank you for giving me a few minutes today. This was a lot of fun for me, a real honor. I've always wanted to be able to interview you. I'm a big fan, and so many fans love you. They, are appreciative for what you've given us as fans over these, 40 years. So thank you for giving me a few minutes today. And I really do applaud you for the career you've had, and just keep doing it, because you have been kicking ass forever.
Thank you, Mike. This was really fun.
Well,
Thank you,
thank
everyone.
you. And folks, there you have it. Claudia Lonow, she has had quite the career, from Knots Landing to being a writer, producer, comedian. I mean, think about this. Like I said this earlier, she told a joke, she wrote it, and she gave it to someone, and Sarah Silverman killed it, like I said. And throughout her career, whenever she's had a challenge that she's had to take on, she has hit a home run every time. She's a credit to TV. She's a credit as a person, to her parents, to her family, and we're very proud of her. For In the Spotlight, I'm Mike Kenichi saying good night, everyone.
Good night.